In the beginning, the world was explained in stark absolutes. Ancient storytellers and philosophers taught that human nature was divided into two polar forces, good and evil. In those times, morality was viewed as a set of immutable laws, commands handed down from the gods or distilled from the ideal realm of eternal forms. Good was the luminous path, reserved for heroes and saints, and evil was the abyss into which the sinners and monsters fell. Yet, as centuries passed, the certainty of clear-cut distinctions gave way to the realization that life rarely fits into tidy compartments. Today, many of us experience moral choices as part of a dynamic process, a journey of inner discovery rather than a fixed state determined by external dictates. Instead of rigid rules, we are now invited to embark on a personal quest towards self-understanding. We learn that every action, every impulse contributes to a grand dance of light and shadow that defines our lives. This video is a guide. It is made for anyone who has ever questioned the nature of right and wrong, who has felt the pull of instinct as well as the call of reflection. Its aim is not to preach dogma, but to illuminate the path toward developing a deeper awareness of oneself and others. For millennia, our ancestors looked upward and inward, seeking answers to the mysteries of existence. In ancient Greece, for example, the great philosopher Plato spoke of the form of the good, an ideal that stood as the ultimate source of all positive qualities in the world. According to this view, goodness was pure, unchangeable, and divine, a luminous blueprint that all actions could be measured against. To be good meant to align one's life with its pristine ideal. Aristotle, Plato's most famous student, brought an element of practical wisdom into this lofty picture. While still believing in objective moral truths, he introduced the idea that virtue was developed through habit and measured by achieving a balanced state, a harmony of one's passion and rational thought. The golden mean, Aristotle argued, was the path to true excellence. In this world, evil was simply what lay outside that mean, a departure from reason and moderation. Medieval philosophers and theologians, such as Thomas Aquinas, inherited and refined these ideas, merging them with the religious doctrine. In their view, the divine order of the universe was unyielding, and human beings were expected to adhere to strict codes of conduct. Transgressions, acts of theft, deceit, and violence were cast as deviations from divinely ordained moral law. In a society governed by these principles, the distinction between good and evil was clear and unequivocal. Consider the epic tales passed down through generations. Heroes like King Arthur, who established chivalry and honor through brave deeds and noble sacrifice, were celebrated as the embodiment of goodness. Conversely, figures like Judas or Cain were immortalized as symbols of betrayal and moral failure. These stories were not merely entertainment. They acted as moral compasses for communities, providing concrete examples of how one might choose a virtuous path or stray into wickedness. Religious texts further cemented this binary outlook. Parables and sacred narratives described sin as a tangible chasm, a force that corrupted the soul. In these accounts, the moral order was as clear as night and day. Every virtuous act pulled one towards light, while every misdeed deepened one's descent into darkness. In the comforting simplicity of these myths, society found order and guidance, even if the complexity of human experience was overlooked. While these models served their time and place well, they also cast human beings into two fixed camps: those who embraced the light and those who succumbed to the darkness. The rigidity of such thought, however, would later be challenged by new discoveries about both the brain and the self. With the rise of modern science and psychology, the neat categories of old began to blur. The human brain is a product of millions of years of evolution, an organ shaped by both instinctual survival mechanisms and, more uniquely, by the ability to reflect on itself. What was once explained as a struggle between external forces of good and evil began to be understood as an internal conflict between different aspects of the self. In our modern interpretation, the question is not simply, am I good or evil, but rather, how can I live more consciously? There is a growing awareness that many actions traditionally labeled as evil are not the result of an inherent, immutable darkness, but rather of unexamined, unhealed wounds, of neurosis that arises when people fail to do the inner work necessary for balance. When we act impulsively, without reflection, the outcome is often suffering, not only for those around us, but for ourselves too. Goodness now appears as the deliberate fruit of self-awareness, a choice to engage deeply with one's inner life and to let that understanding nurture each decision. In everyday terms, being good means pausing before acting, asking yourself, why do I feel this way? What do I truly need? It is about choosing growth, empathy, and creativity over kilter reactions born from fear and anger. Conversely, when reflection is absent, our actions are dictated solely by instinct. Consider those moments of regret when a sharp word is said in anger or when a rash decision leads to unforeseen pain. These moments, far from being the work of an external evil, are the natural consequences of internal dissonance, clashes between the unrecognized feelings and the demands of real life. Evil, in this modern framework, is not an inherent trait, but the outcome of neglecting the inner work that would otherwise transform raw emotions into thoughtful action. Imagine a fierce warrior, long celebrated for his valor on the battlefield. In his youth, he was known solely for his physical strength and unyielding passion. Over time, however, the price of battle began to weigh on him, not in the form of physical injury, but as a deep, corrosive grief. One day, during a rare lull between conflicts, he encountered an aged mentor who gently challenged his assumptions. "What is it that you fight for?" the mentor asked. In a slow process of soul-searching, the warrior began to see that his relentless aggression was not a sign of virtue, but a mask for unresolved inner pain. By embracing quiet reflection, he gradually transformed his fury into dedication to protect instead of destroy. His life, once defined by the dichotomy of battle, evolved into a strive for inner clarity, a personal journey from rash violence to compassionate leadership. Now consider Sarah, an ambitious professional in a bustling city. Early in her career, quick decisions and reactive behavior seemed to fuel her ascent. Yet, as she climbed, Sarah found that each rapid choice left behind persistent feelings of disquiet, as if pieces of her true self had been lost. Attending a seminar on mindfulness sparked a subtle change. Curious and unafraid, Sarah began the regular practice of journaling and mindfulness meditation, gradually peeling back the layers of her automatic responses. With time, the lens through which she viewed her work and people around her became kinder, more discerning. Office tensions gradually eased, replaced by a culture of patience and cooperative problem-solving. Sarah's story reflects a crucial lesson. Personal transformation begins with the simple yet profound act of turning one's gaze inward. In a small town, a community once divided by long-standing disputes over shared resources found common ground through reflective dialogue. A local elder, known for her calm presence, invited neighbors to practice in community listening circles. In these gatherings, participants shared not just their positions, but the emotions and memories beneath them. Over several months, the once fierce arguments softened into heartfelt discussions, each person recognizing that the anger they harbored was rooted in deep-seated fears and misunderstandings. The shared garden that had once symbolized division slowly transformed into a communal haven, a living metaphor for how inner healing cultivates outer unity. In each of these diverse cases, the journey toward inner work turned what had once been destructive patterns into opportunities for renewal. Good, then, is not measured by a rigid code of conduct, but by the ability to question one's impulses and choose to grow. Imagine the universe as a vast, boundless stage, a space where every star and particle participates in an eternal dance. In this coherent cosmic state, light and shadow are never at war. Instead, they exist as complementary expressions of a unified whole, each defining the other by its very contrast. The interplay of luminance and darkness is not random. It is a deliberate, awe-inspiring dance that gives rise to the phenomenal complexity of all that exists. In this vision, the classical idea of fixed good and evil dissolves into an ever-changing interplay of energies. Good is no longer the pristine, unalterable form of the ideal, but becomes a vibrant, emergent quality. A glow that appears when consciousness illuminates the dark recesses of ignorance. Evil, accordingly, is not the embodiment of a nefarious will, but the shadow cast by the absence of understanding. A necessary counterpart that reminds us of our capacity for transformation. This abstract perspective challenges us to see beyond the binary. To act with goodness is ultimately to act with the fullness of one's being, a synthesis of instinct and reflection, passion and calm. Throughout myth and literature, the journey of self-discovery has been symbolized by the descent into the underworld. Carl Jung described this process as the confrontation with the shadow self, those disowned or unacknowledged aspects of our personality. In the abstract realm, this journey is not one of condemnation, but of reconciliation. It is an acknowledgement that our capacity for greatness is inexorably linked with our capacity for suffering, and that every dark moment offers the seed for future blossoming, should we dare to confront and embrace it. As we draw this exploration to a close, it is essential to remember that the journey of self-understanding is never truly finished. The interplay of light and shadow in our lives is continuous, a ceaseless dance that offers new challenges and insights with every step. There will always be moments when old patterns re-emerge, when the temptation of unreflective actions threaten to overpower our hard-won clarity. Yet, it is precisely in these moments that our commitment to inner work becomes most vital. Each day is a new beginning. Every thoughtful pause, every moment of honest reflection serves as a reaffirmation for our power to choose how we live. The classical notion of fixed, absolute good and evil has given way to a richer, more lived experience, one in which we learn that what we once labeled as evil is often but a signal, an invitation to delve deeper, heal, and grow. Goodness emerges not from blind obedience or innate perfection, but from the courage to face one's vulnerabilities and to act from the fullness of understanding. In embracing both the brilliance of our light and the mystery of our shadow, we become the authors of our own destiny. We set the stage not by the dictates of external moral codes, but by the choices we make when we truly see ourselves. The journey towards self-actualization, this ongoing dance between instinct and insight, is, in its essence, a call to live authenticity, empathy, and profound responsibility.